You were not born hating yourself. That is the unspoken, often unnoticed truth that no one ever explicitly tells you. From the moment you entered this world, you arrived as a pure, unblemished being, whole, spontaneous, and utterly authentic. When you first opened your eyes, there was no shame in your gaze, no feeling that you were wrong or defective. You simply existed, alive, curious, free. But somewhere along the way, that innocence was subtly, insidiously eroded by influences beyond your understanding. The feelings of inadequacy, unworthiness, and shame that now shadow your every move did not originate from within you. They were handed down, implanted, and cultivated through a complex web of cultural messages, familial beliefs, and societal expectations. The persistent sense that you are not enough, that you are somehow broken or fundamentally flawed, is not an innate truth, but a learned condition. This feeling, this toxic shadow, has been inherited across generations, passed down like a silent virus that infects your subconscious. It was not born in your essence, but was injected into your psyche through countless subtle messages. Looks that judged, words that criticized, silences that communicated rejection. These messages, often unspoken or taken for granted, seeped into your mind, shaping your self-perception before you could even understand what was happening. Over time, they became part of your internal landscape, convincing you at a deep level that you are inherently defective. What is shame, really? It's not an emotion that naturally belongs to human life. It's a social and psychological construct, a tool that cultures and religions have employed to shape, control, and domesticate human beings. From the earliest ages, we are conditioned to believe that certain impulses, desires, or feelings are shameful, sinful even, and must be hidden or suppressed. Shame in its true form can serve as a protective mechanism, teaching us boundaries, humility, and social cohesion. But in its toxic form, shame becomes a corrosive force, turning our natural instincts into sins, our desires into guilt, and our very existence into something to hide. It is a poison that, once injected, begins to distort our self-image, making us see ourselves as fundamentally wrong, unworthy of love, acceptance, or happiness. This poison, shame, is not just a fleeting emotion, it's a systemic, internalized belief, an invisible toxin that colors every thought, every feeling, every interaction. We internalize it early, often before we even have the words to understand what's happening. Think back to your childhood, to moments when you were judged, criticized, or rejected. Perhaps a caregiver told you that your feelings were inappropriate, that your desires were sinful, or that you should be different to be loved. Maybe you were punished for expressing anger, crying, or simply being your authentic self. These experiences, repeated over time, planted deep roots of shame that grew silently inside you. Roots that now influence how you see yourself in the world. The problem is that we often accept this shame as part of who we are, mistaking it for an innate truth rather than recognizing it as a learned response. We grow up believing that there is something inherently wrong with us, that our natural impulses, our desire, power, curiosity, and vulnerability are shameful or sinful. This internalized shame becomes a lens through which we view ourselves, distorting our self-image and creating a false narrative. I am not enough. I am defective. I don't belong. We learn to hide our true feelings, to put on masks that conform to societal expectations, to create versions of ourselves that are more acceptable but less authentic. In response to this internal shame, we develop what Carl Jung referred to as the persona, a social mask that helps us navigate the world's judgments and expectations. Over time, this mask becomes our false self, a carefully curated identity designed to protect us from rejection and abandonment. We learn to smile when inside we're hurting, to appear confident when we feel insecure, to be agreeable when we're angry or hurt. We mold ourselves to fit the standards of others, whether those standards are imposed by family, society, or culture. Because we believe that acceptance and love depend on our ability to meet those external criteria. But beneath this mask, the true self remains hidden, locked away, wounded and silenced. The more we perform, the more we suppress what is genuine, the further we drift from our authentic essence. Over time, we forget who we really are, believing that the person we present outwardly is our real identity. We are caught in a web of false personas, each designed to shield us from the pain of rejection, each reinforcing the lie that our true selves are unworthy. This disconnection creates a profound internal fracture, what some psychologists call a split self, where the inner life and outer appearance are at odds. The true self, the spontaneous, vulnerable, imperfect core of who we are, becomes a distant memory, buried beneath layers of shame and fear. This internal fragmentation is not just a matter of emotional discomfort, it's a form of silent violence, what John Bradshaw calls soul murder. The internalized shame over years kills spontaneity, joy, curiosity, and self-love. It replaces vitality with a hyper-rational ghost, a version of ourselves that performs routines but no longer genuinely feels alive. This ghost, this false self, lives on autopilot, polished, acceptable, but disconnected from the truth of our being. It's a survival mechanism, yes, but it is also a prison that slowly drains the life from us. Recognizing the false self is the first step toward liberation. We must acknowledge that this armor, this mask, is not our true self, but a response to the wounds inflicted by shame. To heal, we need to understand where this shame originated, how it was inherited from ancestors, reinforced by cultural norms, and internalized in childhood. We must question the very values and beliefs that have kept us small, silent, and obedient. Nietzsche's critique of morality and Bradshaw's clinical insights converge on this point. The shame we carry is rooted in inherited moral systems, values that serve to control, suppress, and weaken our vital instincts. Nietzsche called this slave morality, values born out of resentment, weakness, and a desire for submission. He argued that the morality imposed by Christianity and other religious systems did not arise from a genuine pursuit of goodness, but from a desire to weaken those with strength, vitality, and power. These values invert life's natural expressions, desire, power, strength, and turn them into sins and shameful sins. The result is a moral system that glorifies sacrifice, obedience, and repression, values that deny life's inherent vitality. Bradshaw echoes this perspective, emphasizing how childhood punishment, rejection of desires, ridicule of emotions, and moral judgments internalizes these inherited morals, turning natural impulses into shameful sins. When a child is told that their feelings are wrong, that their desires are sinful, or that they should hide their true selves to be accepted, they learn to divide themselves, suppressing their authentic feelings and constructing a false self that conforms outwardly but is hollow inside. This false self becomes a prison, a protective shell that keeps you safe from rejection but also disconnects you from your true vitality. This repression isn't just an individual problem, it's a cultural epidemic. Our societies, from religious institutions to social media standards, promote a culture of denial. Denial of the body, instincts, and the will to power. Civilization, Nietzsche suggests, was built on repression, a collective effort to tame our natural impulses. The cost of this repression is nihilism, a life emptied of meaning, inhabited by domesticated beings burdened by guilt for simply existing. We are taught to deny ourselves, to suppress our desires, to seek approval at all costs, and to conform to external standards that deny our true nature. This denial creates a vast chasm within us, a space filled with shame, a feeling of not being enough, of being inherently wrong. This shame manifests in the way we lower our gaze, apologize for existing, seek constant validation, and betray our true feelings to gain approval. It's a silent, persistent force that keeps us small, obedient, and disconnected from our vitality. But nature's perspective is clear. It did not intend for us to live in fear or repression. It wanted us to be whole, alive with all our contradictions, desires, shadows, and light. It wanted us to affirm life in all its messy, chaotic, beautiful complexity. To do this, we must confront the shame that has been ingrained in us from childhood and inherited across generations. We need to question the morality, the standards, and the beliefs that told us we are defective for simply being human. Shame, then, is the sterilization of existence. It is the denial of your creative power, the very core of what makes you alive. The more you try to conform to external standards, whether they relate to morality, aesthetics, or social success, the more you move away from your true self. This process of moral repression transforms authenticity into guilt, and guilt into a cross you carry, an internal burden that weighs heavily on your spirit. The deeper truth is that this repression is rooted in resentment, a resentment of life, of desire, of strength. Cultures have often demonized the body, pleasure, doubt, error, and individuality because they threaten the control systems that keep power in the hands of the few. Guilt becomes a tool of control, used to keep people submissive and obedient. This morality of repression, what Nietzsche called slave morality, glorifies weakness, submission, and renunciation because it fears strength and vitality. It promotes the idea that suffering in silence, denying your desires, and conforming to external standards are virtues. Virtues that serve to weaken the individual and uphold the status quo. When you internalize these values, you create a split, an internal divide between who you are and who you're told you should be. This divide is the root of shame. It makes you feel as if you are always falling short, always in need of correction. It compels you to hide your true self, to apologize for your existence, and to seek approval endlessly, even at the expense of your own authenticity. This internal division leads to what Nietzsche described as nihilism, a life devoid of meaning because it is built on the denial of natural instincts and authentic desire. It is a life where the true self is suppressed and what remains is a hollow imitation, an obedient shell that performs the roles assigned by society and morality. And in this process, shame acts as the silent enforcer, making you lower your eyes, apologize for your existence, and seek approval at all costs. But there is a way out. Nietzsche's call for a revaluation of all values is an invitation to radically question and overturn inherited morals and beliefs. It's a call to become the artist of your own existence, to deconstruct the false idols that have held you captive and to create new, life-affirming values rooted in your authentic experience. This act of deconstruction is not chaos, but a necessary destruction, an act of clearing the ground for true rebirth. Imagine a person who has spent years building a fortress to protect themselves from external threats. Over time, that fortress becomes a prison, walls that confine, towers that isolate. The key to liberation is to demolish this fortress, to burn the old defenses to the ground, and to cultivate a new landscape, one of openness, authenticity, and vitality. This destruction is painful but necessary. It allows space for new growth, new meaning, and a new way of being. This process of deconstruction is also a process of self-creation. Nietzsche's philosophy encourages us to see ourselves as artists, artists of our own lives, crafting new values, new identities, and new stories that affirm life. It's about transforming suffering into strength, shame into self-love, and repression into creative power. It's an act of radical freedom, an act of choosing your own path instead of following the inherited, imposed one. But this act of creation is not impulsive rebellion. It demands awareness, intention, and courage. It involves asking yourself, what do I truly value? What makes me feel alive? What kind of life do I want to create? It's about rewriting your story, taking control of your narrative and refusing to be defined by external standards or internalized shame. As you begin this process, you will encounter resistance. Internal voices that tell you that you're not enough, that you're too much, that you don't deserve love. These voices are not your true voice. They are echoes of past authority figures, societal norms, and inherited morals. They are the remnants of internalized shame, whispering their old stories in your mind. Learning to unmask these voices, to challenge their authority, and to replace them with new, compassionate narratives is essential. Gradually, you develop a new internal dialogue, one rooted in truth and self-acceptance. You learn to say to yourself, I am enough. My desires are valid. My imperfections are human. You begin to embrace your full humanity, your flaws, your vulnerabilities, your strengths, and your shadows. This process is not about perfection, but about authenticity. It's about accepting yourself in totality and refusing to hide or deny any part of your being. Living authentically means living as a whole human, vulnerable yet resilient, imperfect yet genuine. It requires the courage to be seen, to be vulnerable, and to stand in your truth. It involves risking judgment and rejection, but also claiming your rightful space in the world. It's a continuous act of self-affirmation, reminding yourself daily that your worth is inherent, that your desires are legitimate, and that your life is valid just as it is. When you free yourself from shame, you reclaim your right to exist without apology. You begin to live according to your own values, not those imposed by others. You craft a life that reflects your deepest truth, a life where your body, voice, impulses, and story are expressions of your authentic self. This is the act of becoming a free spirit. Someone who refuses to bow before internal idols or external pressures, who creates their own values as an aesthetic, philosophical, and existential act. To be free in this sense is to say yes to life, embracing all its contradictions, chaos, and beauty. It's to face the darkness without pretending it's not there, to affirm yourself even when the world says you should hate or hide yourself. It's about cultivating the courage to live fully, boldly, and unapologetically. This journey is not easy. It involves pain. The pain of losing familiar identities, of breaking old patterns, and of facing internal and external rejection. It requires courage to confront the internal voices that tell you you're not enough, to dismantle internal idols and to rebuild a new self rooted in truth. But the reward is profound. A life of genuine freedom, joy, and fulfillment. A life where shame no longer rules your inner landscape and where your true self can breathe freely. The process of liberation begins with a simple yet powerful act: to declare loudly and clearly, I free myself from shame. When you name it, you shed its power. When you speak it aloud or write it down, you begin to dismantle the invisible prison that has held you captive. Naming your shame is an act of sovereignty, an assertion that you refuse to be governed by the false stories of defectiveness and unworthiness. Share this declaration with others. Many people live in silent shame, convinced that it's a natural part of being human. They carry burdens they believe they must accept, unaware that liberation is possible. Your act of naming and claiming your freedom can be a spark for someone else, a beacon guiding them out of their own darkness. But this is just the beginning. The real work involves going inward, reconnecting with your wounded inner child, the part of you that was silenced, rejected, or abandoned. This inner child is the core of your authenticity, the vital force that still waits for recognition and love. Healing involves going back to that child, listening without judgment, comforting, and giving voice to what has been suppressed. John Bradshaw emphasizes that this inner child is not just a poetic metaphor, but a real, living part of you. It's the root of your authenticity and vitality. When this child is wounded or silenced, you live in fragmentation, living out a false persona, disconnected from your true essence. The process of healing involves rescuing this child, welcoming it back, allowing it to express its feelings, anger, sadness, joy, and providing unconditional love and acceptance, so that it can heal and integrate into your adult self. This reintegration is neither straightforward nor easy. It's a journey into your own darkness, facing the internal voices that tell you you're not enough, that you're too much, that you're unworthy. These voices are echoes of authority figures, societal norms, and inherited morals. Voices that have been internalized over years, shaping your self-image and beliefs. To unmask these voices, to challenge their authority, and to replace them with a new narrative rooted in compassion and truth is crucial. Gradually, you learn to speak to yourself in a new language, one of kindness, understanding, and acceptance. You remind yourself that you are enough, that your desires are valid, and that your imperfections are part of your human nature. You begin to live as a whole person, embracing your vulnerabilities, celebrating your strengths, and owning your story. Living authentically means recognizing that vulnerability is not weakness, but the foundation of true strength. It's the courage to show up as yourself even when it's uncomfortable or risky. When you free yourself from shame, you reclaim your sovereignty, the right to exist as you are without apology or explanation. You no longer need to conform, mask, or hide to be loved. Instead, you stand in your truth, affirming your worth simply because you exist. You become the artist of your own life, creating your reality with intention and purpose. You craft a life that reflects your deepest values, desires, and passions. One that nourishes your spirit and honors your unique journey. This act of creation is both an act of rebellion and an act of love. Rebellion against the inherited morals and societal standards that have kept you small. Love for yourself and your life, enough to forge a new path, one rooted in authenticity, vitality, and joy. Nietzsche's call for a revaluation of all values echoes here. To question, deconstruct, and rebuild your inner moral landscape, transforming inherited shame into self-love and self-acceptance. Imagine your life as a work of art, a canvas awaiting your brushstrokes. You have the power to transform pain into power, suffering into growth, shame into self-affirmation. This is the creative act of becoming your true self. It's not about rebellion for rebellion's sake, but about consciously choosing to live in alignment with your deepest truth. This journey demands courage. The courage to face your darkness, to confront internal voices that tell you you're not enough, and to dismantle the internal idols that have held you captive. It's about risking rejection, facing discomfort, and embracing uncertainty. But the reward is worth it. A life of genuine freedom, joy, and fulfillment. A life where shame no longer defines you, and your authentic self can breathe freely. And so I invite you now to take a simple yet profound step. In your mind, in your journal, or in the comments, declare aloud or silently, I free myself from shame. Naming it, claiming it, releasing it. When you name the prison, you begin to dismantle it. When you speak your truth, you reclaim your power. Share this declaration with others. Many are still living in silence, believing that shame is a natural part of being human. Your voice can be a beacon for someone else, a reminder that liberation is possible, that healing is within reach. But remember, this is only the beginning. The real transformation requires going inward, reclaiming your inner child, healing old wounds, and reconstructing your true self. It involves confronting the internal voices that perpetuate shame, voices that tell you you're not enough, too much, or unworthy, and replacing them with a new narrative rooted in compassion and authenticity. In the next step of this journey, we'll explore how to reconnect with that wounded inner child, the part of you that was silenced or abandoned, and how to nurture it back into wholeness. Healing is a process of reunion, reuniting your fragmented parts, embracing your shadows, and honoring your vulnerabilities. It's about creating a safe space within yourself where all aspects of your being are welcomed and loved. This process is not linear or easy. It's a deep dive into your own darkness, facing fears, doubts, and old pain. It's a confrontation with the internal voices that have told you you're not enough, that you must hide or deny your true self. But with each step, you reclaim a piece of your authenticity, gradually restoring the integrity of your being. The journey of healing involves unmasking these internal voices, those relentless tapestries of self-criticism, guilt, and shame, and replacing them with stories of compassion, acceptance, and love. You learn to speak to yourself as a friend, as a beloved, not as an enemy. You remind yourself that you are enough, just as you are. You begin to live as a whole person, embracing your imperfections, celebrating your vulnerabilities, and owning your story. Living authentically is not about perfection, but about truth. It's about accepting your full humanity, the light and the shadow, and choosing to live in alignment with your deepest values. It's about cultivating the courage to be seen, to be heard, to be loved for who you truly are, flaws, scars, and all. It's about recognizing that vulnerability is the birthplace of real strength and that authenticity is the ultimate act of rebellion against shame. When you free yourself from shame, you reclaim your sovereignty, the right to exist without apology or justification. You stand tall in your truth, no longer hiding behind masks or personas. You create your life from a place of genuine self-acceptance, crafting a reality that reflects your deepest desires and values. You become the artist of your existence, painting with bold strokes, unafraid of imperfections, and committed to living fully. This act of self-creation is an ongoing process, a continuous act of experimenting, redefining, and reaffirming your truth. It's about forging a new path, one that honors your innate worth and celebrates your unique journey. It's about turning pain into power, suffering into resilience, and shame into self-love. And ultimately, it's about claiming your freedom, the freedom to be yourself, fully and unapologetically. Because you are not here to become perfect, you are here to become real. Your worth does not depend on meeting external standards or suppressing your natural impulses. It resides in your very existence, in your capacity to feel, to desire, to create, and to love. So I invite you now to take that first step. Say aloud or write down, "I free myself from shame." Name it, own it, release it. When you do, you begin to dismantle the internal prison that has kept you small, silenced, and disconnected from your true self. Remember, this act of liberation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing journey, an act of radical self-love and authentic living. Share this declaration with others who need to hear it. Many are still living in silent shame, believing it's just part of being human. Your courage can inspire them to take their own steps toward freedom. Remember, too, that healing is a process, a journey into your own depths, into the wounded inner child that still waits to be loved and recognized. It's about going home to yourself, reconnecting with that part of you that was lost, silenced, or abandoned. In this ongoing process, you will confront the voices of internalized shame, those relentless tapestries of "you are not enough," "you are too much," "you don't deserve love." These voices are echoes, remnants of authority figures, societal norms, and inherited morals. Internalized messages that have shaped your self-image. The work of healing involves unmasking these voices, questioning their authority, and replacing them with stories rooted in compassion, truth, and acceptance. As you do this, you begin to live as a whole human, embracing your vulnerabilities, celebrating your imperfections, and honoring your unique journey. Living authentically means recognizing that vulnerability is not weakness, but the source of true strength. It's about having the courage to show up as yourself, scars, shadows, and all, and to stand in your truth even when it's uncomfortable or risky. The act of liberation is also about creating a new narrative, one that affirms your worth and affirms your desires. It's about rewriting your story, becoming the author of your own life rather than a character dictated by shame. This process involves cultivating new values, new beliefs, and new practices that honor your authentic self. It's about building a life that nourishes your spirit and reflects your deepest truth. Imagine your life as a masterpiece, a painting, sculpture, or poem that you craft with intention and love. You have the power to transform pain into power, suffering into resilience, and shame into pride. This is the act of becoming your true self, the artist of your life, creating a reality that is authentic, vibrant, and free. This journey is not without its challenges. It demands courage, the courage to face your darkness, confront your fears, and dismantle internal idols. It involves risking rejection, standing in your vulnerability, and embracing uncertainty. But the reward is worth every effort. A life of genuine freedom, joy, and fulfillment, one where shame no longer has dominion over your inner landscape. And so I invite you now to take a profound, simple step. In your mind, your journal, or in the comments, declare aloud or silently, "I free myself from shame." Name it, claim it, and release it. When you do this, you begin to dismantle the invisible prison that has kept you small and silent. You reclaim your sovereignty, the right to simply be yourself. Remember, this act of liberation is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. It's a daily act of choosing authenticity over conformity, truth over fear. It's about cultivating the courage to live fully, embracing all aspects of your being, your light and shadow, your joys and pains, your imperfections and strengths. Your freedom lies within you, waiting to be claimed. It begins with the decision to stop living according to inherited shame and to start living in accordance with your truth. It involves daring to be seen, to be loved, and to love yourself unconditionally. It's about trusting that your worth is inherent, that your life is valid just as it is, and that your journey is uniquely yours. So I urge you, take that first step today. Say it aloud or write it down. I free myself from shame. When you do, you open the door to a new life, one rooted in authenticity, vitality, and genuine self-love. You reclaim your power, your voice, and your right to exist fully and freely. And remember, you are not alone in this journey. Many have walked this path before you, those who dared to confront their shame and emerge transformed. Their stories remind us that liberation is possible, that healing is real, and that the only thing standing between you and your true self is the courage to begin. Now I invite you to make a simple yet profound declaration. Tell yourself, I am enough, I am worthy, I am free. And then with determined heart, step forward into your own authenticity. Your life, your story, your truth. These are your greatest gifts. Embrace them fully without shame and begin the journey of becoming the person you were always meant to be.